Welcome, everyone. As mentioned, my name is James McArthur. I am the head of revenue operations at New.io. We are a Salesforce native quote to cash solution. And I am really excited to be joined today by Matt Pieper from LeafLink. And Matt, tell me a little bit about yourself and how'd you get here?
Oh man, starting in the 80s in Louisville, Kentucky. No, just kidding. So took a roundabout way to get here. Big into tech as a kid, right? So I think I had my first Acer 286 when I was like five. And my introduction to computing was how do I get video games to run? And so that's how I became an engineer, was editing batch files. Thought I would go into tech and said, first day of engineering school, I sat down and talked to someone and they're like, hey, I'm studying. And I said, man, this is the first day of school. And they're like, that's when I realized I was not cut out for engineering school and moved over to business. And then through a roundabout way of the army and business degrees, I got back into engineering as a software engineer. And then I became an accidental Salesforce dev because we implemented Salesforce, didn't the partner bounced. No one hired anyone to support it. And we had a bunch of Apex because it was 2009, 2010. So it was all Apex, no flow, workflow builders, classic, and went from there. Expanded from Salesforce dev to business systems and enterprise engineering. But I've always been the engineering mindset in business systems talking to RevOps. So it's interesting being on a RevOps webinar as a software engineer. So please don't attack me, people.
Honestly, I'm so excited that you're here because it's the accidental admin story is a classic trope of RevOps where it's like same thing happened to me. Whereas 2012 for me, and I was basically I came into MakerBot and I was coming in as an inside sales guy, and they're like, "Hey, we're using Salesforce." And admin really screwed it up. You seem smart. Can you do this for me? And I jumped in and then 6 months later found out everything I'd done was wrong, which is exactly the way you think it should go, probably. No, but it's the accidental admin thing is great. And I think the best part of the systems journey and the developer journey is that very often for RevOps people, it's the part that we get stuck in. I will forever say that systems is a trap for RevOps.
Yep.
RevOps is strategic function. It's very built on creating solid process, doing things right, but then the act of actually building those processes are better left to people who are very focused.
Yeah, I agree. And it's even something that you don't hear as often. But if you talk to the admin evangelist team, they're like, hey, we don't like the word accidental admin anymore because they've realized the platform is sprawled so much that you have to be an expert in security, data modeling, development, right? Flow is code. Like it might say low code, no code, but it's code. It has development paradigms all over it, right? You have UI, UX, you have strategy, all of that stuff, and that's a technical role. Like I hate to say it, but it's very technical. That's why engineers exist. But back in 2008 and 2009, it wasn't that sprawling, right? Like you had very small data, you had very few integrations into things, and that was the heyday of that accidental admin, probably from '08 to 15. But then the platform got huge, right? Like we got
Yeah.
data cloud now, you have AI and prompt engineering. If I'm an admin or a systems person who also has a full-time job, there is no way you are set up for failure because there's no way you're going to learn all of that in your day to day unless you're burning the midnight oil learning that. And that's not a great spot to be in. Like, we need to set up our teams so they can learn on the job. And if they're very enthusiastic, they can pick up skills afterwards, like coding. But we do ourselves a disservice, right? Operations is operations. They run the business. It's not developing platforms. It's working with other teams and having that product engineering mindset. But that can be a whole other webinar. So I will get off my soapbox on that one.
No, I 100% agree. It's like systems are product. You are building a product. You are building a complete solution for your team. Like just because it's an internal team doesn't mean it's less of a product engineering focus.
Yep.
It is,
Yeah. You delight your
I
customers, right? And you're customer obsessed. That doesn't matter if they're external or internal. External obviously give you money, but internal is how you make your money. And the more you break those bottlenecks, you enable those teams to actually deliver and make their commission and bring revenue into your business, right? If they're fighting systems or swivel chairing or just banging their head or doing all that, that takes away from their time on the phone, right? Or their time solving cases. If you're in CX, if you're in finance, right? Doing strategic planning, make things simple and hire the right people who have made that their career.
100%. And honestly, couldn't ask for a better segue into our topic today, which is why the Salesforce contract object is entirely, and frankly, most contract objects in any other system, because whether you're calling it a table, whether you're calling it a module, whatever you call it, it's an object or it's a table. Like the contract object is in itself a table. So I'm not going to go, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But the reality is, why is it overrated? Because it's, and honestly, I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. So let's start out from the beginning, which is like, where did the contract object come from? Like, why does it exist?
Yeah. So if you go way back in the good old days of SaaS, right? No one really sold SaaS other than Salesforce, and then Oracle tried, right? And then you had the ecosystem build up. You got the boxes and drop boxes of the world. But predominantly those users of the CRM, right, were those professional service folks, right? Or they were selling goods, cell phones, or manufacturing. And all of those things were very contract driven, right? Like I'm sitting in front of someone and I'm handing you a piece of paper and you're saying, cool, I'm buying this stuff. Will you deliver it? Perfect thing for contract. That's why we also had orders, right? Like I sign this contract and then I'm going to have orders against it because that's how they come out. And so it was really that was the impetus. Like, how do we serve these traditional everyday things that we do in manufacturing and outside of Salesforce, right? That were literally pieces of paper on carbon copy at one point, believe it or not. And for those who don't understand carbon copy, it was a thing that we had to do back in the day where you wrote on one piece of paper and there was carbon under it that wrote onto another piece of paper. And that's how we did business in digital worlds. And really, it's how some people still do business, but I digress. But then we
The
introduced
credit
SaaS,
card
right?
swiper with the thermal
Credit card
paper. I
swiper.
can't.
Yeah. Yep. I was like, man, in the 90s when I had a job and you had that credit card swiper, and you're like, how are people not stealing credit cards? It just blows my mind. Since the dawn of the credit card in the 50s, they just copied people's credit cards and it wasn't a massive fraud and no one thought that was an issue. They're also paper at one point, but anyway, I watch way too much History Channel. Contract object and why it exists. So we went from manufacturing into to subscriptions, right? And we said, cool, we have SaaS. People order software either on a term basis or an evergreen basis, which evergreen didn't even exist till 2019, by the way. Remember that evergreen and no platform didn't exist until 2019. It changed the model, right? And so we said, cool, we had CPQ, we have NetSuite, we have Sage, we have QuickBooks. What do they use? Contracts, because they were built for manufacturing and professional services. And so we took orders and subscriptions and added them and then smashed them into contracts. And then 606 rules came around because accountants love to ruin everyone's fun. And they said, cool, we're going to base revenue recognition and all of that based off contracts because even if it's not a contract, we'll call it a revenue contract. And that's how you book things. And so the contract just kept on coming back. And we're like, cool, how do you renew something? It's a term contract. When does it renew? How do we tie this order next to each other? And we just kept doing that, whether it was Aptus, whether it was SteelBrick, whether it was NetSuite, everybody, it was like, cool, the contract's the way to go.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing that moving to new, frankly, made me think about was I had never actually really thought about the fact that in the traditional world of managing contracts, it's there is no state of the entire relationship. That just doesn't, I'd always thought about it as these two make up the state of it, but that's fundamentally flawed, where you need to have the thing that was bought and everything that was agreed to around that. And then you need to have the relationship. And those are the two things that I think, for me, really, I see that as the limitation where it's like you're bifurcating your customer journey here. And it's the idea, it makes sense. If I'm selling you cell phones, it makes sense. But the moment I need to start adding minutes onto that contract, or the moment I need to start doing any of that, the whole paradigm starts breaking down almost immediately. I think it's really interesting, which kind of takes us to the next piece, which I think we're going to get more in depth here, which is how has the market changed in your world? What do you think? How do you think the market has changed, and what are the ways that, because for me, we saw like from 2009, we saw the market irrevocably change where people started thinking more and more about, okay, maybe I need to focus more on subscription selling and renewals and focus on customers, basically. Then 2022 caused a whole bunch of confusion in that nobody had any money anymore. So they were entirely focused on renewals, upsells, churn. So everybody started talking about CS. And now it seems like there's a regression happening. Where do you see, how have the markets changed for you? And where do you think that's really driven this?
Yeah. So when I first started using Salesforce, I was in professional services, right? Like we're a venture capital organization and we are literally signing contracts, right? Here's your term sheet. That was a one-to-one contract. What's your asset? Hey, it's money. And even in software, right? When I was buying it, we had, oh, you're buying Microsoft SQL Server. It was a contract for 1 year, and you literally had an asset, which was a CD that got mailed to you, and you installed it, and you had a license key that you installed, and that was your asset. 3 years later, we had the advent of Azure, right, and AWS, where it's like, cool, instead of a computer, right, and that software and that license, you're now spinning up service that they own. So that even changed the market. And you saw AWS do lots of crazy things with their Salesforce and CPQ around it. So you had that progression from all of these installed bases and like assets and like phones and hardware mixed in with SaaS, right? So you even had hey, we're going to send you a physical asset and then a subscription on top of it, which is a service plan, right? Those two things don't match up, especially because you get upgrade, downgrade seats, all of that. So you had that first paradigm shift. And then same thing, right? We moved to out of subscription to usage based on a lot of things. Snowflake being a classic example where we're not going to sell you number of seats, we're going to sell you number of compute minutes. And that changed completely because now you have usage based and you're not generating invoice and your rev rec's completely different. And as you mentioned, we had this digital revolution right in 2020 where everyone was signing contracts. Like, I'm buying Slack, I'm buying Zoom, I'm buying everything, which was great. And you had those revenue contracts in traditional model. And then you started seeing the rifts where it's cool. Now you've held somebody to a contract as the legal binding term that held this bucket of orders, and everyone is locked into their spend. So what happened? I'm spending $100,000 a year. I used to have 100 users. Now I have 50 users. How else can I use your software? And so you saw all those amendments fly in. Like, everyone's trying to save ACV and they're trying to make customers happy because they know they're going to churn. So what can we give them other features? I've done that 3 times with Salesforce now, right? Those users don't exist anymore. I've already sent you money. Can I use that on something else? And they're a very CPQ heavy org. And we saw that. I think too, it's that vernacular. Like, when's the last time you're like, hey, can you sign that contract? It's not that. It's, can you sign that order form or I'll get that quote over you. Like, we never talk about contracts. I mean, we do in the back systems, but your reps are like, hey, cool, sign that order form, or hey, I'll get that quote over to you. We don't even talk contracts other than just that bucket that holds everything together for revenue, really.
Yeah, and thinking about going back to our conversation around like product engineering and how you productize this, it's like when we think about now usage being more and more prevalent, like we've seen with almost every single major business model now utilizes usage in some way, with some of the pioneering ones where it was like Twilio, Amazon, they really brought forward usage as a revenue model, but it's like, where are you seeing that impact within your own engineering like process and how you're thinking about both now and ongoing?
Yeah, I think it's that ongoing conversation as we move to usage of what platform is responsible for it. In the old method, it was your ERP. You're uploading that against an ERP and you're letting it calculate that and bill it out and track it. But now we're getting more and more, right, where customers want to see that in real time in their platform so they can go, whoa, we overspent there. We need to pump the brakes, or oops, that was an oopsie. Can you guys like give us credit there before the end of the month? And you auto debit money out, right? And users are wanting, and companies are wanting to see more and more of that analytics. And traditionally, we've buried that as an industry, right? There's some really good ones out there. Even some brands I don't like do their display very well. But that's the move I'm seeing is it's less now about, hey, you have CPQ or your RLM out here standing alone. That's what reps use. And it's being poured more and more into product-led growth where engineering teams and product teams actually need to understand how companies build their customers and those mechanisms because a lot of the time those get built in silos and you get build manual efforts, right? Even if it's just, hey, I got to run a data warehouse report, download it, and then upload it to your ERP. Like
Yeah.
it's 2024, guys. Let's do some software and automate our lives.
I think it's one of the funniest things because I remember when I was at Go Nimbly, one of the things they talked about again and again was the fact that B2C figured this out decades ago.
Yeah.
Like telecom providers have had this on lock since 1970. So it's the reality for us is now that B2B is catching up to what was ostensibly the B2C experience with like easy upsells, easy usage tracking, easy changes, it's interesting now that because I think the thing that comes down to it is the fact that with our contracts, we have a term and we have an agreed upon thing and we're selling one to many. And so you end up with the complications around that, which is like, where do you see the failings? Like for this traditional bifurcated system that we're talking about, where you have an order, you have a contract, and you're thinking about which again, to the comment in the chat, like it should be called agreement object. Like that should be its name. But where are you seeing that breakdown happen? Like, why do we have these problems?
Ooh, that's a great question. I won't name any names, but I think it's this idea that even though we have a contract and we agree a contract basically sets the following. In the legal language, what can you do to get out of it? What services are you offered? What's the term length, right? How do you pay annually, monthly, et cetera? Like those are really those core commercial things that really the contract does.
Yeah.
What's interesting is no single platform out there that has a contracts object, whether it's an ERP or Salesforce or HubSpot, actually, they don't have any, do it the same. Like I have an ERP that you can do whatever you want to evergreen subscriptions. You can change it mid-term, right? You can do partial amendments, full amendments. You flip it over to Salesforce and nope, sorry, you can't do partial amendments, things like that. I can change my contract length in my ERP, but I can't change my contract length in Salesforce. So like now I'm having to integrate multiple platforms that even though we have this legal concept of a contract, they implement it differently. And so why do we have this, right? Like it's and the two systems that I'm talking about were built in the same year, like both in 1998. So you have literally the same progression path. You're literally in the same city. You know each other. Like, why are your implementations so differently? Is it because one is more GTM related and one's more accounting related? Not that we ever see problems with that across anything we do, right? So like that evolution, right? So many people extend their contracts or early renewals. Like, why do we care about an early renewal? We should just extend the end date because that's really all we're doing. We're not renewing it. It's already there. We're just kicking that length back out. And the platforms don't allow us to do that. They don't provide that flexibility. I can understand 100% from a manufacturing or a legal firm, right? Where you're literally talking, you're like, no, we have to agree. But subscriptions and SaaS are so fluid, right? Everything changes and goes. I think that's the pickle we got in is we all grew together and scaled over the past decade, but none of us really had a common consensus of what we needed to run our businesses.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that has struck me, which is that we talk to a lot of folks, and we'll have people that say, when someone goes a little bit over, they want to adjust their contract, or when there's someone because everyone has now in the world, it's 2024, everyone has an online MSA. Everyone as online agreement. The agreement you're signing is literally only a transaction. And so in this world, it's so easy to, okay, I need to add a user. That should be a button click. I need to extend out a month. That should be maybe probably two button clicks and maybe some typing. But the reality is it's really hard. And so one of the things that traditionally has led me to pull my hair out was thinking about that from a cancel and replace functionality, and where the idea of you're having to make a single change across four different objects minimum, 4 to 32 if you happen to have Salesforce billing. You're having to make a change across 4 to 32 objects, and you're doing this through entirely custom automation. What are the things you've seen really work there to build functionality into it? Thinking about ways to make it work, and what are the ways that, and I have my new take, which I'll say afterwards, which goes to our last point here, but what are the things you've seen work?
Oh man, cancel and replace, nothing. Like I I get frustrated with cancel and replace, right? Because you're literally saying that you have this contract that you agree to and you have to sign to it and it's your binding terms. And then on the other hand, you're saying, cool, we're canceling it and we're going to replace it with another one. Like, how does that make sense? There's no change that happened. Most of the times that you cancel and replace, like like your customers seeing it the same, right? Like they don't see a new contract. It's the same. So like we're literally canceling it and replacing it. And if you have that contract, mapped to your ERP, that's often also a manual step. So you're having to cancel it in Salesforce and replace it. And then you're having to go to your ERP and say, hey, finance, we need to run some accounting treatment to back that out. So that's a huge challenge. Not to mention, like the average rep, like, why am I hitting cancel and replace? How do I make sure that we bring every single object over? How do we make sure we don't break those subscriptions in our provisioning software? All of those challenges. So to your point about what works well, it's making sure everyone's on that same page, right? And you have those processes, whether either it's just a post to Slack and a check mark, hey, finance did that, or it's an approval process that you have to go through. It's the communication and sending that data to your other platforms. Else, that's where the stuff breaks down, and the training. But that's a lot of training that you have to push into a rep to say, hey, cancel this one, select this. By the way, these are traditionally third-party packages that most reps or companies install because it's a lot of automation. So it's a black box. But I think it just boils down to that education and communication is the only way I've seen that work well. It's still a lot of manual lift and to tracking depending on the volume of your business. But I'm glad you brought up RLM or Salesforce billing actually, because I laughed when I found out that Salesforce billing doesn't even use contracts; they use orders. So even the thing that Salesforce built to build billing uses orders and not contracts. So that's another dichotomy that we have. And I wanted to comment on RLM because someone mentioned my favorite product, RLM. I would love to learn more about RLM. I would love to know what RLM supports and doesn't support. I would love to know RLM's path from CPQ and how they don't use contracts. But sorry, no one's saying anything about it to the public. And even at Dreamforce, I've seen only 3 sessions. So if you know about RLM, shoot me a DM and I'd love to learn from you.
Yeah, and I think that the side of communication brings up a major piece, which is, and I'll go into our subscription object later, but it's from a revenue reporting side and from the subscript and like communication side, which we talked about PLG motion, how people are moving into a faster pace, trying to make things simple work. This also feeds on the revenue stream side and the revenue reporting side, where having this broken object architecture, which is the thing I'm gonna call it because it's 2 different objects to ostensibly do one thing. Where are you seeing, and also from a platform side, where are you seeing the failings of relying on this kind of architecture from both a reporting and from that communications angle?
Yeah, I think that it's another breakdown in communication of GTM and sales look at their pipeline and their revenue completely different than your accounting and finance team, right? You're looking at, cool, this is revenue I'm bringing in and this is my pipeline. And they're over here saying, No, we're worried about like actual realized revenue, right? And then whole debits and credits and piece like that. So I have seen more times than I can count over the years where those two reports are completely different. AAR is different between the two, and those two teams just fight. And it's fun to watch an outsider, but these teams shouldn't have to fight, right? We should have one number, even if it's caveated, hey, here's your gap number and here's your revenue number to your board, right? Because most boards understand AR, right? Subscriptions. A lot of boards will also understand the financial reporting aspect of it and have those links. So that's one of the biggest challenges I see. And it's also the adjustment, right? So if you're on an evergreen, like what's your MRR or ARR, right? Do you have agreement across that on your team? Do you tend to lean more towards termed? What about that upsell on a partial contract? What does that mean? Those two are completely different recognized on an orders and opportunity object versus contract. At the same time, right? Like certain implementations of ERPs don't even recognize orders as a thing. It's contracts and opportunity line items. And they cut out orders, even though that ERP also supports orders. Those are the challenges, right? I talk about orders all day long in Salesforce, but then I talk to accounting and they're like, hey, I don't have orders in my ERP. What are you talking about? And that just, it causes confusion all around on RevRec.
And I think that for me, the one, this is honestly, and shameless plug here for New, but it's one of the reasons I joined New, which is that we do all of this full cycle, which is the idea that we say, okay, your order is your agreement. Your order is what you've bought. Subscription is your lifetime with that customer. Assets are the actual physical things your customer bought. If you're selling them a phone, you're selling them something like that. And entitlements are the things you have to like actually get service. So professional services, put milestones against it, all of that, which gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of all of these things. And I think it's where I'm seeing these failings not happen here is it's interesting because the thing that it always came back to was that break. So NetSuite, thinking about the sales order in NetSuite side, it's like I have seen people thinking their opportunities, people with CPQs thinking their opportunities into NetSuite, thinking their orders into NetSuite, creating a custom object that then syncs into NetSuite. And it's all custom built because there is no best practice really around this.
There's some partners out there who'll tell you it's a best practice, but that's just what they implement, right? It's not necessarily based on anything, and it doesn't work for every company either. I worked in a company that had a completely different revenue stream and how we calculated pieces that no one could support because we had so many checks through it and we had to build customization. I think it goes back to, hey, there's no best practice because once again, the implementation of the systems are differently. If I go into Sage and I want Sage to maintain my contracts, I have to create a price list item for every single different price versus in a subscription management tool, like even a Zora, right? Like you have price book entries that are customized for those. So like in the ERP, you're literally creating a giant list versus this dynamic piece. And so there's no best practice because everyone uses a different quoting tool and everyone uses a different revenue engine. Now, granted, yeah, the majority of us out there are NetSuite and CPQ, right? Like, and I'm loving the fact that CPQ has lots of competition that's not just Aptus or NetSuite, right? And so we're seeing that diversity of thought, which is both good because it gives us diversity of thought, but it also starts to branch us out even more into these different thoughts and best practices. That's why I'm excited for groups like the RevOps Co-op and accounting groups that sit together and go, okay, cool. Here's how we're all working together. What's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, and how do we start to roll those in? So as people progress through their careers, move to different companies, like they bring those standards with them and we start to build our own best practice that the software vendors aren't giving us because they're fighting with each other. Like we need to start like forcing our vendors to agree and build that common operating model so us as the customers succeed.
Yeah, and that is something that because the reality is, when you think about CPQ and billing, I remember Recurly.
Yep.
Recurly is a perfect example where their idea of subscription is diametrically opposed to literally any other system's idea of subscription. And it is something where that will immediately break your model. Because if you're going out and you're quoting a product, if I'm quoting something to a customer and then I send that over to my finance team, they then need to manually recreate that, or they need to make manual adjustments, or they need to do something like that. And it's something that it's interesting to me that we've ended up in this place where many companies now, frankly, the presence of a deal desk in a lot of cases is because of this very issue. And so, what are some ways for you that you think people can think about this and get ahead of those data model breaks? What are some systems that you've used that work? And then I will also include a shameless plug on new again at the end.
For all the crap that I give Salesforce, like CPQ, if you're a very simple business, works, right, in contracts. Same thing. I will caveat that if you are new to market and you don't know your what revenue works, do not buy CPQ. Don't. Just don't. Like, you are going to build something and then it's immediately going to change even before that implementation's over. Like, you're going to architect it. Like, proof of concept, yeah, it sucks, right? You have to create your own orders and your own opportunities and own subscriptions. It sucks, but it's a lot less painful than trying to customize a whole bunch of stuff in CPQ or Aptus or anything else, right? If you're small and simple, you don't need a CPQ. If you do want a CPQ, I know a guy who knows a really easy one to set up, and you can talk to him. But that's my advice, right? Is just do what's good for your company. Don't choose something because someone says you have to have it to be a real company. If your board's giving you that pressure, explain to them you're going to save them a bunch of money. You're going to learn product market fit. You're going to be able to move faster building your own or a simpler platform than trying to buy one off the shelf that is, the gold standard. Circuit City was a gold standard for a long time, right? They don't exist anymore for a reason. So that's the system that I see work. Secondarily, if you talk to a partner or a consultant, don't just take their word for it. Like, they're seeing other things. They're implementing typically what they implement. Push back on them, ask questions, make it your own. You are the customer, you own Salesforce, not your partner, not your vendor. Do it, right? Like, fight, have those tough conversations, partner across the business. This is a team sport, right? RevOps can't do it by themselves. Engineering can't do it by themselves. FinOps can't do it by themselves. Have those conversations, get alignment, and then even disagree but commit, right? Like, you have to get everyone on the same page for this to work across systems. From a software vendor side, there's a couple that I like, none other than one that I'm in love with. And I know that guy as well. We still have to integrate that into our current environment because we're in a thin slice approach. So we're going to have those difficult questions up front, and we're having them now, right? Like, we're sitting down, everyone on the team, and saying, what's our processes? What error rates can we accept? What amount of manual work can we accept? Like, manual work isn't bad when you're doing it at the beginning. If you're doing it 3 years from now, definitely bad. It's okay to have manual review processes at first and truly understand what data is coming in and out of your platform, regardless of what you buy.
Yeah, it's like the number one thing, and to echo your point, is accept technical debt. Like, it's going to happen. There's no way around it. Like, we talked about at the beginning, we talked about your org is only as good as your last Salesforce admin, which at the end of the day, your org is going to have by the time you IPO and then go sail off into the sunset, your org is going to have dozens of admins touching it. Your org is going to have tons of technical debt built into it. It's don't let perfect be the enemy of good when you're getting started. Just run and once you need to start getting once you're going to start getting audited, once you're going to start, you need to have those numbers be right, and your company's reached a certain level of complexity, then start standardizing. But when you're just starting out, be flexible, be nimble, get running. And then once you get past that, then start building out that deeper architecture. And when you're ready for a CPQ, i.e., you start running into any of the problems we've talked about in this, which is accounting, manually recruiting contract, trying to figure out revenue, I'm happy to talk to you. I convinced many people not to buy a CPQ over the last year. And then I've convinced a few other ones, maybe it's time to look. But the reality is it's when it's right for you, have a conversation, talk Talk to Matt, talk to me, talk to Camilla, talk to anyone in our industry. Has Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, not to cut you off, but I was like, tech debt, right? Like tech debt is massively misunderstood. Like tech debt isn't bad. Yes, there's very bad tech debt, right? If you have I plus in your test, like that's bad tech debt. Fix that like now. If you have DML loops and triggers or flow, like that's bad tech debt. Fix that now. But there's this misconception about tech debt. You have intentional tech debt and you have unintentional tech debt. Unintentional tech debt's usually where you get into trouble, right? You're like, hey, that's stuff that's keeping us from scaling that we did not plan for, we did not think about. But intentional tech debt is cool. We know that doing it this way is going to require rework or has a scaling concern. However, it's a great way for us to POC, have lessons learned, and go from there. That is okay if you have a plan to address that tech debt later.
Mhm.
If you're just like, hey, if you run a POC and you never operationalize that POC, that's bad tech debt. You have to operationalize those POCs in order for any of this to work. If you don't, you stack POC on top of POC on top of POC on top of POC. And that's when you're like, oh crap, my entire billing or any other process is broken. This is also where I'll plug in test, right? If you have integrations that are doing any sort of revenue integrations, have tests around them. I don't care if it's Apex tests, third party tools, manually clicking it. Like anytime you make a change, like test. Like I see too many orgs where they come through
Mhm.
billing like 4 or 5, 6, 7 months later. Oh man, we have a real mess. We've overcharged people. Our rev rec's bad. And you go back and you go through Git blame. You're like, oh yeah, on this date, someone changed this automation and no one actually tested it, and we could have caught it way, way early. So that's also one of the things that you just have to do, right? And it sucks. Running tests and all that is awful, but it's a lot less awful than getting smacked with a finding on your audit at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, put in a plug here for something that I know Matt very firmly believes, which is use your sandboxes. Do your
They're there
POCs
for a
in a
reason.
yeah, do your POCs in a sandbox with data. Like, just do it, and then afterwards, guess what? You can delete it. It's built in. If it doesn't work and it won't impact your production environment, do not build flows in production. I say as someone who built a flow in production yesterday, which it's fine, but it's not fine. I shouldn't have done it, but I
Webinar
did.
over. Done. I'm leaving.
Yeah, it's but build, have a plan to deal with your tech debt, know how you're going to fix it. I know everybody says the V1 ends up being the final version, but the reality is like plan for your V2, V3, understand what you're doing, and just in general know what the next step is.
And
With
write
that,
everything down, right? Like design first. I can't tell you, like 80% time is of my time is spent writing down, and you will see my documentation will have questions. Like, can we do this? Oh crap, if we do this question mark. And then I refine it and I actually have a pretty doc and we can like work off it, have that process flow. And that saves so much time too, even when you're V1 and V2, because you can list assumptions. Before we built this integration, here were all of our assumptions. Now we built it, oh man, our assumptions were wrong. But now you've documented that and you understand it and can have conversations of why it broke.
yeah, and this is where I will plug Lucid Chart. I know it's old. I know they haven't updated the UI since 2019, but the reality is it's like design, map your flows, map everything. With that, though, I we have concluded the Q&A portion of this very fun webinar. But we're opening the Q&A. What questions do people have? What thoughts do we have? We've had a very active chat, so I have not been following along.
My ADHD keeps me following along in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of a lot of the noise. It's interesting. We've seen quite a few comments on learning how to differentiate your quote to cash amongst your competitors. And then also, I may have said this, but extending your customer excellence cap to your AR and legal and quoting and contracting process. I don't see enough companies really take on advocacy for creating that same special customer experience all those go-to-market teams are trying to put in place.
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, I think that's huge. I guess poll for the group, like how many folks are have that relationship with GTM and finance. Like, how many reps understand how billing works at your business, right? If your reps don't understand how invoices are generated, or CX doesn't, like, educate them. That'll save you so much time and heartache.
And
we had a lot of conversation about yes for sandboxes, no for sandboxes. I did a merch plug. I'm sorry. I had to.
shameless plugs are fine.
Yeah.
It's, as long as you mention that they're shameless up front.
Yep, I jumped on the bandwagon. Charlie did ask, do we have any idea what percentage of Salesforce customers manage their contracts and contract data only in Salesforce?
I don't know. I've never heard a stat on that.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't either. And I think that even if you did hear one, I'm very certain it'd be wrong. Because the reality is, it's like, until your CPQ or your contracting system, which very often your CPQ is not your contracting system. So there's that. But when your CPQ and your contracting solution are separated from your finance solution from a data standpoint, or the database or data model doesn't match up, you're almost never going to have the same structure between the two, and the records aren't going to be the same between the two. One of them is going to fall out of date. And that's, I think, for anyone who says that their contracts are only in Salesforce or their contracts are only in those systems, they have to be, in the end, billing system.
Yeah. So I think here's an interesting one, right? So if you, and there's probably more pieces of this, like if I have CPQ, I have Revenue Cloud or whatever the crap they're calling it, Salesforce billing, part of Revenue Cloud, asterisk. Your invoicing here, you're not using a contract. And so you're taking those orders or invoices and writing them as like journal entries in your ERP. Yep. I think that might be a common one where you only have like contracts in one and the rest you're really just doing rev rec and like GL posting on it. I think, but I don't know how common that is, because most of them, like your billing engine is usually your ERP or third party. So I don't know. That'd be interesting to find out.
But also from a rev rec standpoint, it's like there are differing ways that people can, even looking at Salesforce billing, where Salesforce billing's rev rec is entirely built off of the order object.
Yep.
And then you have Stripe, which runs it entirely off the invoice. And then, with the exception of usage. And then when you have, or anything in arrears. And then you have QuickBooks, same thing. And you have Avatac, or not Avatac, no.
Avalara.
SaaS Optics. That I have Avalara on my brain right now. But no, when we think about like SaaS Optics, they're running it in more of the traditional order route. It's, I think, you look at RevRec, people are doing this in different ways across every single one of these platforms. And I think that is another issue that we have when we're talking about this, which is these platforms aren't communicating consistently across one another.
Yeah. Or they have integrations that are native out of the box, but no documentation around them. So you set them up completely wrong. Somebody's going to watch that and know exactly what I'm talking about. But Charlie, great question. Do contracts and the data by nature need to live across your CRM, billing, and ERP? This is a great it depends question. It depends on, are you running a cash basis, right? Are you running an accrual basis? Do you need to apply to 606? Are you subscription? Are you entitlement? That gets some funky enterprise architecture and CPA rulings, but I would say the average company does it of two different ways, right? Like they either have an all-in-one solution, such as New, that can do billing and ordering, and then you send that over to ERP for RevRec or a third party, or you're generating that contract or order somewhere, and then you're transforming that to another system to have it across. So it really depends on what software you have, what your processes are, and going from there. If you're not running subscriptions and like Evergreen, you're only doing like annual contracts, you're going to have a completely different answer than somebody who has Evergreen in termed, right? And allows cancellations versus non-cancellation. So that's my it depends. But James, you see a lot more of this across customers. Not sure if you have a different answer.
Yeah, I think it's not different because it very much, it depends. And it's going to change. But the reality is, like, your contract, you need to have one place where you can look back and say, the customer bought this. That source of truth needs to be in one system. It needs to be one set of records. This is what the customer bought. You need to have another one that said that for reporting purposes, for your purposes, for managing the customer, that says, where in the life cycle of this customer are we? And where and what have they done over the course of their relationship? And that is another set of records. And I say set of records because it could be the original order feeding into that. But the reality is, you need to have one place you can trust for every stage of this journey. It is a journey that your customer is going down. It's the same thing as the sales cycle. Everything is a journey. And you need to map that, understand where your sources of truth are, understand where you're actually going to look back when you need to gut check what someone actually bought or what changes were made. And the fact is, if you have different teams making updates in different systems for this revenue journey, you're going to end up with a bifurcated revenue cycle. And we see this time and time again where we'll install new and all of a sudden the customer will be like, oh, I underbilled by $300,000 in the last year. And it's because they end up in that cycle. So no matter what you do, this goes back to design, which is you're building a revenue journey, understand it for your business, understand where each of these data points and these sources of truth are going to lie. And when you're ready, come talk to me. But also just design for yourselves and build. But yeah, with that, we are at the end. Thank you all. Thank you, Matt. Any last thoughts, Matt, before we head out?
Yeah, I just leave you right with talk to your peers, talk to everyone. The more you have these conversations, the best. I'm on this webinar or podcast. Doesn't mean that I'm the expert. You all are experts as well, and I can learn from you. But yeah, sandbox, don't do anything in production. Just please don't.
And with that, I appreciate everybody. Thank you for coming. And I second everything Matt just said.
Thank you. Let's move this conversation to the community, and I hope everyone has an excellent day. Thanks, everyone.